It's always been interesting to me to see the different ways that cultures deal with funerals. Like in the West, in most countries out here, when we deal with something like this, when a person passes away, it's terrible. So much crying, so much suffering, so much sadness, grief, maybe even anger. It depends on the situation, but sometimes people can even be angry at the person for passing away, perhaps in their eyes too soon. They should not have left them yet. You should have been there longer for me. Stuff like that might enter the mind of a human being, right? And all depends on how a person passed away, of course, because some are more tragic ways to go than others. With some you can see it coming from miles away, so to speak. Like you can see it months and months ahead of time because of an illness, and you can prepare for it. And other times it happens out of nowhere. Literally almost out of nowhere. You never see it coming. And there it is, in your face. Someone passed away. And now, what are you going to do now? Well, again, in the West, most people cry. In the East, most people cry as well. But there's also different kinds of concepts behind this phenomena of death, where some cultures celebrate it, which might sound strange to most people in general, where it's like, why would you celebrate that? Why would you throw a party when a person passed away? It's like, what's wrong with you? That's the initial thought for most, perhaps. But now let me ask you something. Do you even know what it means to die? Do you know what death is? Because if you know what it is, then actually, suddenly celebrating it becomes more logical than to cry over it. Imagine that. We've been crying over it mostly because of ignorance. But let me add something to this. The crying after someone passes away in and of itself is not wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Because if you understand death, then you can also understand the crying being pretty much based on the fact that you will no longer interact with this individual, physically speaking, in your current reality, in this current dimension. And that is a sad thing. I mean, especially if you've known them for years or decades in some cases, right? Then it's sad that you can no longer interact with these people the way you were used to for so many years. So then the crying is kind of, finding peace and acceptance over this loss, this physical loss. And here's the keyword physical. There's all these key words here in this video that I hope you understand, but we'll go over them slowly but surely. But physically you lost someone, which can be a sad event, and so crying is not bad. It's a normal human response. That's all I wanted to say. So it doesn't sound like there's something wrong with that or anything. But you see, what I consider wrong and kind of silly is if we don't look further than this, where the person is gone and we're sad about that, and then we leave it at that, without investigating what happens. Is there more to death than we realize or not? And if so, can I confirm this? That's the important part. Can you confirm this for yourself? Because if you can, well then you have the proof. Then you no longer have to doubt about anything. As long as you don't have this experience, as long as you don't confirm this for yourself, it remains a mystery, a hope. Something you have faith in, that you believe, hopefully this is true. But I don't know for sure, but I hope it is. I sure hope there's an afterlife. It sort of goes like that. See, people have these doubts. Sometimes they tell me about going to hell or to heaven forever and ever. It makes no sense to me. Once you understand death from your own experience, personal experience, then you understand these concepts as well. What they truly mean, what they truly are about, and what they are not about. Where you were manipulated to believe stuff that isn't even true. The religions of this world, societies of this world, have trained you to believe stuff that isn't true. That have caused you to fear, worry about these things. Caused you to worry about your own death. Will I go to heaven or hell? Am I going to burn in hell forever and ever? Or am I going to paradise? Oh please God, I hope I lived a great life. You see how ridiculous this is? If you truly knew yourself, you would not live your life in this manner. You would actually be way more at peace, and you would throw off religion and society at large, for the most part. because the majority of it all is fear-based indoctrination. It's meant to keep you in a certain pattern, to keep your mind boxed into a certain way of thinking and living, which is not free at all. So what happens after death? What actually happens? And if you can confirm this for yourself, well, what would you experience? Well, here's the thing that you have to understand. Your physical body is, for all intents and purposes, just a vehicle, something you use in order to function in what we call a time-space reality, a three-dimensional space. Now, can we confirm this? Because this sounds so wild and wacky to most people still, that they will not believe it or will not accept it. They think this guy or this woman must be on drugs or something. There's something, they're mentally ill or something. They just won't accept it. But you can confirm it. In fact, it is possible to lift up your consciousness beyond the three-dimensional space. And when that happens, you understand yourself to be a formless state of awareness that operates multidimensionally. And if you experience that for yourself, then you can no longer doubt this. Well, you can question your own sanity, of course, in comparison to this world that doesn't seem to understand this or talk about it. But you cannot deny the experience either that you've had when it occurs to you. So what's important to understand here is that your real nature is consciousness, is awareness. It's an energy. It's an energy form. So when we look at the physical body that we right now are using, which is important to understand, you just use it. You are not the physical body, you're using it. You can say that the physical body is like a reflection of an invisible energetic body, a body of pure energy. That is the real you. The body of energy is the real nature of yourself that is inhabiting this body, that inhabits the body right now, that is functioning through this body. The body is alive because of that energetic, spiritual, invisible body of pure awareness. Now, what happens at the moment of death is that it disconnects from the physical body. And these things, I'm not making them up. I didn't read them in a book. I went out and investigated this for myself. I keep investigating this nature of my true self. So what happened to me not too long ago again, like a week ago, I was laying in bed, because this is where you can practice this yourself. And I discovered it is true, when the brain waves alter in the human skull, when these brain waves that can be measured altering when you go to sleep, consciousness is set free from the body temporarily. Which then also shows that a certain brainwave frequency that we are on when we are functioning, physically speaking, keeps consciousness locked into this dimension through the five senses of the body. But when you go to sleep at night, the brain waves alter, consciousness can expand beyond the body, and that is why you have dreams at night. That is just one glimpse of the fact that your consciousness is multidimensional, that you are multidimensional. But if you do this with awareness, with actual conscious awareness, what happens then, as I've experienced at least, is that the brainwaves alter as I lay there, and then something detaches. That's the only way to describe it. But yet you're still awake and aware within your consciousness. But you can sense, you have a body of energy. I could sense it, I could move it around, I could step out of my physical body. Literally, I stepped out of it and stepped right into another dimension. Now, this is the thing. There's multiple dimensions that exist simultaneously in the same space that you occupy. So by doing this, by stepping out of your body, by letting the brainwaves change frequency so the consciousness can go out temporarily, right? Because you're still alive physically, therefore it's temporarily for now. You can enter into different dimensions because you're operating on a different frequency, spiritually speaking again, with your consciousness. So I stepped out of my body and I saw my home from a different dimension, different perspective. But I also saw different realms altogether while I was all about it. Now this is important to understand. If you have not had this experience for yourself, then you either believe me on this or you think that's crazy. But if you believe me on this, it's still not the best. It is better for all of us to experience this for ourselves consciously and deliberately before we die in general. Because then, as we are here physically, we understand the true nature of who we are. Because this occurs when you pass away. This body of energy, pure awareness, pure consciousness that you really are, simply disconnects from the physical body and enters into different realms. And since all dimensions occupy the same space on different frequencies, it is true to say that the dead are just a frequency away. Isn't that fascinating? So the next time you're at a funeral, just know that the person that is in that coffin is actually just a frequency away from you. But they're on a different frequency, therefore your physical senses cannot perceive them. But the higher senses, or if you change your frequency through consciousness, then your range of what is visible changes around. What you perceive changes around. Therefore we call them spiritual senses, but it's basically you just connecting with a different frequency. So understand that the brain and body keep you locked into three-dimensional space. When it is asleep, temporarily, you're allowed to perceive beyond three-dimensional space, and you understand yourself to be a multi-dimensional being if you do this consciously. Otherwise, they are just memories. These dreams are always just vague, strange memories that we have. But by going there consciously, you realize, yes, indeed, we are multi-dimensional beings. And that is absolutely beautiful. If you understand this, there's no longer a need to worry. There's no longer a need to really cry. Again, the crying is alright temporarily, where you're like, okay, it's sad that you can no longer interact with them in this three-dimensional space, but at the same time it's amazing, and that is why some cultures celebrate it. It's amazing to know that this person's consciousness is set free from the limitations of their physical body, because that is what it's doing. The brain and body have been built in such a way to keep your consciousness locked into three-dimensional space, and there, in that locking in mechanism that happened to all of us, we forgot our true nature. And we started to believe we are the physical body. We started to give all of our power to physicality, and now we suffer. And now we fear, and now we worry. We forgot that we are all part of God, of the true unity, the true source consciousness behind all of creation. If you redirect your attention to the source consciousness that you really are, you can overcome all your doubts, worries, and fears. You no longer feel intimidated by this physical realm. Because as long as you're intimidated by this realm, well, that's also the reason why you give up your power and never truly know who you really are. And as long as you don't know who you really are, conflicts keep happening everywhere around the globe. All these conflicts on this world, all these wars, etc., are because people have forgotten who they really are, or they simply do not care. They might know, but they just don't care about it because of reasons, right? If you truly understand we're all part of the same source consciousness, then it doesn't make any sense to have wars or conflicts or chaos. It makes no sense. Because essentially we are fighting ourselves. How weird is that? But that's a topic for a whole other video, these wars of this world currently going on. But they will keep going on. They've been going on for centuries, basically. For so long, thousands of years. It's because the masses do not know who they are, and only the minority seem to know. And then the minority is ridiculed by the masses. It has to stop. You have to wake up. Remember who you are. You are not the body. You are pure infinite consciousness.